Hello and welcome to rolling out in another edition of Sisters with Superpowers Author to Author Chat. This is our very first one done live. So we've come from behind the virtual screen for a real conversation, author to author. I'm your host, Christal Jordan, and I'm so excited to be here with my sister, Terrinee Gundy. Now, before I even talk about the book that we have, Terrinee is a philanthropist, she's a community activist, she is a judge, she's been a part of the fashion industry, just a leader in the city of Atlanta. And I'm so honored to have you join me here for our first live.
I'm so excited to be here on live. One, you know I'm technically challenged. Okay. So it's exciting, one, that we can do it like this. Absolutely. And because we are real sisters in real life.
Absolutely.
I always appreciate being in your presence and getting this love and energy from you. So I'm excited to be the first live guest.
You are, and this is such an important conversation, because this is a conversation I don't think we hear talked about in a space with no judgment. Right? And so that's why I'm so excited. Again, before we get into this book, I have to say your first novel, or your first book here, it is an autobiography, The Daughter of a Junkie, a true love story, has some pretty heavy hitters co-signing. You have former mayor of Atlanta, Kasim Reed. You have R&B superstar Tyrese.
Yes, yes, yes.
And my absolute favorite, OBGYN, Dr. Jackie Walters.
The best.
Absolutely.
Yes, she delivered both of my children.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's awesome. Dr. Jackie is one of those sheroes that I feel so honored to, have in my circle. Like, she's just such an amazing example.
We've been BFFs over 20 years.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
That is a beautiful thing. Well, without further ado, I want to get into this book because I had a chance to talk to you, when you were in the pre-promotion stage, and we were talking about the title. The title just... It smacks you in the face.
It does.
Right? It's like, wait a minute.
You have to deal with it.
You have to deal with it because you see this beautiful picture of a beautiful woman who's very successful, very achieved, has done all this, has all these amazing achievements, and then you see Daughter of a Junkie, and it's like, is this a song? What but this is the reality.
Prank?
You're right. What is this? And so, Terrinee, what gave you the confidence to tell your truth, starting with the title of this book?
Yes. So my father has smoked crack cocaine since 1978, so over 40 years.
Wow.
And which means that I grew up in the 80s epidemic. And during that time in our communities, especially mine, I'm from Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay.
The poorest zip code in the state of Florida, 32209. There was a lot of judgment on addicts and their families. And again, my sister and I navigated our environment, our surrounding, the best way we knew how. I have no idea how at such a young age we knew to embrace our story, but we did. Because what we were not going to do was allow you to use my father's addiction against us. And so that's really birthed The Daughter of a Junkie. I've been calling myself the daughter of a junkie as long as I can remember.
I read that in the book because you were like, you and your sister would say, my daddy's a J. And I was like, oh my God. Because
it's like, so what?
I take away the power for you to define that. I remember having an amazing conversation with Afeni Shakur, and she told me I was dealing with some really painful things. And she said, if you tell your story, you take away anyone's power to use it against you. But again, to your point, for you to have that
use
foresight.
It against you as well as to miscategorize it. Because when someone else tells the story about being the daughter of a junkie, it's not my story. Because you would have told it, and the universal you, not necessarily you, but they would have told it from the standpoint of the way that Hollywood or movies or the media had portrayed it. No one is talking about the love that junkies still provide for their children, for their families, for their loved ones. They're still humans. They still show up for us. Yes, they have some flaws. But they still have some good parts that, they pour and impart into us. And so for me, if I allowed someone else to tell my story, not only am I taking my power back, you're not even telling my accurate story. That's not my story.
That's not my story. That's not my story. As we're talking, I'm thinking of all the many people that we've seen allow reality TV to into their homes, right? I think it started with Keisha Cole years ago, and she, you know, had a reality show, and we saw her mother, and we see another. There's a young lady named Marie Monroe on the Bell Collective, and she's struggling with her mother. We see so many instances of that. As myself, also a daughter of a father who was on crack cocaine. When I see those stories, there's something that's consistent through all of them. The child never stops loving that parent. I don't care what society says, let her go, let him go. There is, you see the pain, because with pain is proof that there's love, right?
Correct.
On both sides. So can you talk, because I just feel like this book is going to be such a huge part of the healing process for so many people that love their parent, love their sister, brother, love a family member that's struggling with this, but the world doesn't really understand why they have so much grace, why they continue to give that person another chance, even when a lot of people would have turned their back.
Yeah, so for me, you have to think about it. Like, just think about you and I, because you're saying all these amazing things about me. You're pretty incredible yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah. But half of you, half of me is the junkie. And so if we continue to say we don't love the junkie is nothing, the junkie has nothing to offer, when we look in the mirror, what do you expect for us to see as the other half of us?
Absolutely.
Like, it's just the unfair wage of war on children.
I agree.
So for me, when I look in the mirror, I honestly saw all of the amazing things in my mother and father. And I was able to take all of the good and say, but I'm going to leave the bad on the side. I was able to say, I'm going to learn from your mistakes, but also learn from your brilliance.
Right.
Because my father's brilliant. And he and my mom both, they made me into a lawyer. They made me into a judge. They built me to have work ethic. They built me to have morals and standards. They built me to, like, I didn't come out just like with this sense of humanity and
you weren't
love.
born like this.
Somebody has to teach you these things.
Right, absolutely.
And so they imparted those things into me. So I just found it very impossible not to love them.
Yeah.
And I did not, again, I have no idea. My sister and I, we were very young. I have no idea how we had the discernment to know, or to know that we were not going to let community or culture or society or socialization tell us something different.
Right.
But I just never felt like you have the right to tell me not to love my father.
Absolutely.
Again, I believe that I get to authentically be Terrinee. And I love him. And I will say it proudly, loudly, everywhere, anywhere, as the daughter of a junkie in 32209 on 8th and Myrtle, or as Judge Gundy sitting here with you today. I love him. I'm going to always love him because he loves me. And I am half of him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That part is, I think that is so, that's such a big part of identification as a child, right? So regardless if you know, a parent is absent or a parent is not, a parent is good or a parent is bad, a child automatically kind of creates their identity based on who their parents are, you know? So that's something I definitely thought about. I remember when I was hearing about how my dad was struggling, I was wondering, like, what does that mean? What does that mean about me? You know, what does that say about myself? Family is huge. One of the things that I picked up reading this is that you and your sister specifically, but also just you guys had a very tight-knit family. Like, I could feel your dad's pride in his family reading this book, right?
Yeah.
So first, I want to know, like, how did you know? Because you knew about your parents' love story, you know, them meeting at a HBCU, them being so in love with each other, and just, you know, your dad standing up and saying, I'm not going to leave my wife. I'm going to, you know, challenge her father and get my wife and my beautiful baby. So tell us about how you learned about your parents' story.
I learned about it because my parents are great storytellers. And maybe that's where I got the gift of storytelling. Maybe that's where I got the confidence in storytelling. Because my parents, my father is what I call an historian. He is a historian of our family history, of Black history, of American history, of sports history. He knows more factoids than any person I've ever met in my life. Anyone. And so they were great storytellers, and they were young. Yeah. They were in love. And I think that they just had a real pride in, you know, a close-knit family. And they always wanted their children to embrace love. Like, and this is the thing my parents had in common, which I think is generational. We've heard this, I'm sure you've heard it. The generation before their parents, I call it the Great Depression generation. Yeah. They did not have the luxury of showing love or expressing love. So my mom and dad both said that their parents never told them they loved them. They knew they loved them. They showed them through their actions, but it was not verbalized. And so I think that both of my parents were very intentional about making sure not just to show acts of love, but to verbalize their love for my sister and I, because they wanted us to never doubt it. They always wanted us to know how much that we were loved. But I think they also wanted us to know that we were created out of love.
I think that's huge for a child as well. I think when there's a different type of confidence that comes from, you know, I'm intentionally here. I wasn't an accident. Somebody didn't accidentally slip up and move on, but they wanted me. I was conceived in love. I mean, it's a luxury that not everyone has. But
and then as a Black female, you know, it was a big thing for men to have male children. My father never carried that bone. He was always just as happy and prideful to have a daughter as his firstborn. So it was never any of that, you know, sexism. I tell people that my daddy was a progressive man way before we had a term to coin it, because he believed in teaching us, you know, how to be strong and to stand on our own. But
and
also,
he was teaching you things that weren't necessarily things that you taught little girls, like count the money, right? You know,
count the money,
right? Yeah.
You're going to learn not just how to count the money, but you're going to learn how to run this business. You're going to be able to replace me and be better than me. But he also would look at me and say, oh, you want to be a lawyer? Yes, I'm going to help you. You're going to be a judge? Yes, I'm going to help you. Versus back then, and I don't know if you remember this, you know, that I was constantly told I should be a teacher or a nurse.
Those were the occupations
that were acceptable for us.
Women, specifically women of color. Like, you know, that's just who our community was. So again, that is amazing foresight that he had the courage in himself to be able to say no. They can do what they want to do. You know?
He called me the other day and he said to me, we had an event in Tifton, and so it was at his childhood best friend's church. He came down from Jacksonville, and so afterwards he called me and he said, you know what? You've just been the perfect child. I just love you so much. You've always been the perfect child. So you got to think about that. Like, I've had that kind of support.
From day one. So, all right, don't go anywhere. Trust me, we're just scratching the surface. So much more to come from this conversation. And my hope is that parents hearing this, sisters hearing this conversation, mothers, grandmothers hearing this conversation will be able to take some of these nuggets and realize how important it is that we sow into those little lives that are placed in our care. Stay right there. We're coming back with more author-to-author conversation right here on Sisters with Superpowers. This is Christal Jordan coming back with author Terrinee Gundy. Stay right there. All right, we're back. This is author-to-author conversations, another Sisters with Superpowers edition. I'm your host, Christal Jordan, and I'm so excited to be talking with my sister, Terrinee Gundy, who is a judge, influencer, and author here in the city of Atlanta. The book, The Daughter of a Junkie, A True Love Story, is out. We were talking a little bit about your family's history and the fact that in addition to this one piece, right? The addiction, there were so many other amazing things, right?
Yeah.
So much love, so much confidence, so much sewing into, you know, you and your sister as the next generation, and the understanding that, you know, being able to instill pride in you from a young age was really important. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the struggles, right? And the challenges that came along with that, because, you know, we see this, we're introduced to this young girl who has all the confidence in the world, but yet she has some pretty heavy things that she has to deal with. So let's talk about young Terrinee and how she kind of rose to the occasion of handling things. But there's a line in the book where you said, you know, we were dysfunctional, but you didn't realize it because you were just stepping up to the challenge.
Yeah, you know, you've heard people in the past say, we were so poor, but we didn't know we were poor. Yeah, so people ask me that, and here's what's really scary. I didn't realize how dysfunctional it was, literally, until I start writing, thinking about my own children. Wow. So I've gone an entire lifetime not realizing that my childhood was just that dysfunctional or chaotic. Right. Because it was just, it's the only thing we knew.
Yeah, it's normal because you don't know anything else.
I don't know anything else.
And then you talked about how your mother really kept you guys. She didn't allow you to go other places. So you wouldn't really have a point.
I didn't have anything to compare it to.
Absolutely.
One of my girlfriends, one of my best friends, Iman, said that to me. She said, you know, you never went over to other people's houses and thought, oh, I was like, we were not allowed to do that. Right. No, I didn't have anything. I didn't go to school. And for me, education was my way out. I was getting my sister and I out of the ghetto. Okay. And so I couldn't sing, can't dance. You know, I'm not really funny. Like, the only thing I've known that my father has always told me was that I was exceptionally intelligent. And so for me, education was my way out. So when I was at school, I didn't really even fraternize or socialize in that way, because I was taught thinking and using school and education the way you see star athletes focused on their talent. I was super focused on my education. So it was never really any time where I could do a comparison or a contrast, because I would be at school and I would need to do my work at school, because I don't have time to do it at home, because I got to go home and I have to make sure that I cook and I clean and I wash clothes and I make sure that my sister and I are okay, because my parents are out trying to make a living. And you say, I want to make one point that I try to make, because I think that people think I'm delusional sometimes. They say I don't realize, or I haven't realized what I've gone through, and that's not true. There are going to be parts in this book that are going to be very dark. And you're going to want to hate my parents. I'm begging you not to do that. I am begging you to lead with grace and love, and understand that they were just doing the best that they could. They were young. They had a disease. Because we keep saying addiction and junkies, but it's a disease.
Right, absolutely. The words are so important, and how we look at the situation, how we frame it, right? And so, and that is so insightful of you to say to the reader.
Yes.
How did you do that? So even as a mother, because I think for myself, when I became a mother, I became so aware of everything that I wanted to put into my kid. And so then, no matter what parents you have, they're not perfect. Just like we're not perfect. I know I've probably, made some mistakes that my kids are going to have to deal with one day, probably in therapy, but,
But not those mistakes.
Not those mistakes. I made some totally different mistakes. But how did you look back from the vantage point of now being a parent and have the ability to offer, to remain in that graceful place and not say, oh my God, or even just shed a tear for little Terrinee that had to do all that and didn't realize that was a lot for her to deal with?
I've never felt like, one, it was a lot for me to deal with. Okay, so let me, again, this is where I lose some people, and I'm being sincere. I had a little sister that I begged God for. I begged him. And when I got what I asked God for, I promised him and my mom and my dad that I had her. And so I didn't have a weight or a burden. I thought it was a privilege and honor to carry her, to protect her, to show up the best version of myself every day because I had someone looking at me. And so that is the first thing. One, it was never a weight. I call us the core four, my mom, my sister, my dad, and I. There were never any victims in the core four. And so when I think about what you said about my children, yes, there are sometimes, there are things I definitely wanted to do different. I say to people all the time, I didn't want to give my kids the trauma or the violence or the chaos, but the life skills that my parents imparted in me are invaluable. So I was trying to figure out how to do that because I feel like they did a damn good job with me and my sister, despite their addictions. So you can't discount what they did do in us, what they did create, where they were able to keep 2 little Black girls in the poor zip code in the state of Florida, out of prison, out of poverty, out of early teenage pregnancy. And we go on to become the first graduates. My parents went to college, but they didn't graduate. We go on to become the first college graduates on both sides of our family. Again, they did some stuff right.
They really did a lot of stuff right.
And they need to be given credit for that. And those are the things that I wanted to impart in my children. But I've never felt like I needed to shed a tear for myself because I felt like everything that was in front of me or behind me was training. Like I've had a lot of challenges personally. You know about some of the personal things. You went through similar personal things as me that were in front of me. I've gone through professional challenges, unfairly or not, which I thought they were. They were still in front of me.
Right.
But when you go into a crack house and negotiate your daddy's life out at 8 years old, you are prepared to deal with that. There's not very much that you're not prepared to deal with.
Right.
When a woman who is your teacher and entrusted to teach you and responsible for you slaps you in class because of the color of your skin, there's not much you're not prepared to deal with. So I've never felt sorry for myself. I feel like all of that was training for the life that I had prepared for and the life that was in front of me, the life that was going to change the trajectory of my family's history. I needed to be built for that. Right. And they did a damn good job doing that.
They did.
Sorry, I get very passionate and defensive about my parents because, again, everybody hears the junkie part. But I focus on the love part because the love has me sitting here with you today.
And the love has created what you were able to build.
And the love is why I wasn't broken.
Yeah.
I could have, this could have gone left for me.
Absolutely. I don't think that you're delusional, but I'm sure that you know how blessed you are to have the story that you did, right? And I also think that this is your story because you were supposed to tell it, right? So let's talk about, okay, you have this successful career. I've seen you and your sister together. Everything that I learned in the book, I saw through the interaction of the two of you just immediately. It is one of the most remarkable sisterly bonds that you can see. So you can see that the book is just very transparent. What made you decide to do this now in your career at this point? I mean, you were a very successful lawyer. Like I said, you got the Art Guild doing different things in the communities. Definitely a huge leader in the city. I don't think you can get much higher than being a judge. We look at success and how we judge that, right? No pun intended. How we do that. But what made this the perfect time to write this story on like your dad's 70th birthday last year?
Yes, and my grandmother's turning 90th this year. There were several reasons. So this story started, again, I spoke about my professional challenges. And again, I was built for everything. I signed up to be a public servant. I know what comes with that. And I took it without complaint. But then there was a story done on my child. My teenage child. And I felt like that crossed the line. And, you know, as a mother, it was the last straw for me, because what happened was for 5 years, I allowed the media to tell my story. And none of it was true. It was so far from who I was or what my story was, but I dismissed it when it was just about me. But once you came for my child, then I felt obligated to protect her and to tell the truth and the real story. Because one, I needed her to feel protected, but I also needed her to know the truth. So that's how it started. But then once I started writing, and the more I got into it, I really start focusing on that. My sister and I have always thought it was such a disservice the way addicts and their families are treated. And so I started feeling like it was my purpose to stand in the light for other children of junkies. Because so many of us suffer in silence. Like you said, my story's very different, and I understand that. But there are other people to this day, friends that I have, adults who still deal with the inner child who is dealing with that parent who was a junkie. They don't say anything to anyone. They are made to feel not just ashamed of their parent, but ashamed of themselves because they're a part or associated with an addict.
Absolutely.
And I just thought it was terrible the way that we have been socialized to make children pay for the sins of their parents. So I dedicate this book to other sons and daughters of junkies for that reason.
I, as one of those children, you know, and I told you my father's story ended very differently. My father died from an overdose. And it was so difficult for me to say that, difficult for me to express that. But I did, and I went and talked to so many addicts and so many children that are siblings of addicts. And I just want to say that I'm so proud of you, and I'm so thankful that you gave us a different story.
Thank you. And I know that when people say that to me, I'm always appreciative. But it always feels different when I hear it for the audience that I was trying to truly reach, to say, I see you, I love you, and it's okay for us to love ourselves and our families. So I appreciate you saying that to me and having the strength and courage, because I know how hard this is for you. You have not always led with this in your life. And to share this publicly with me, I do not take that for granted. And I am appreciative. And I love you.
I love you too. Thank you so much, Terrinee. Seriously, I'm trying not to cry.
Me too.
But I just want to encourage everyone out there. First of all, this conversation is one that I think so many people need to start and continue to have. You know, art imitates life.
And It's so funny, just the conversations we're not allowed to have. Like, why can't we talk about our parents? Why can't you talk about your father without being made to feel ashamed? But this is what society has done to us as children who are now adults. And we are still, again, fighting the battle, fighting from when we were children. And it's just, it's not fair. It's not right. And I hope that, again, because I know I've gone through sobriety with my father, and sobriety is a personal choice.
Right.
I feel the same way about children of addicts. It's a personal choice. It's your story. Just because I'm sharing my story doesn't mean you have to share yours.
Right.
I just want you to know that I have the strength to stand for all of us. I have the strength to step in the light of love and tell people that we deserve love. We are human. Our parents deserve love. They are human. And I am going to give them the respect and grace that they deserve.
With that being said, let people know.
Yes.
Where they can get a copy of the book.
We are at Barnes & Nobles, of course, and then Amazon.com. We have an audiobook that is scored with original music performed by Iman Ramadan. And we also have an ebook. I think that if you like audiobooks, you're going to love this one because, again, this is the first time it's been done in Audible. It has original music and sound effects. You're going to sound like you're watching a movie. But if you just like turning the old-fashioned pages, Amazon.com, or you can go to my website, thedaughterofajunkie.com. And that is my name everywhere because I am proudly and forever the daughter of a junkie, THE. So IG, Threads, my website, Amazon, anywhere you want to find me, just type in the daughter of a junkie.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys hanging out with us here on Author to Author Chats. This is obviously been a very personal one for myself, but I think that just shows the power of literature. And I hope this encourages someone else that has an amazing story to share your story. You never know how important putting those words to paper is and how that can impact someone's life. Again, thank you all for watching. This has been a Sisters with Superpowers conversation from one sister to another sister. And of course to you all out there. We'll see you next time.